An American invention, breakfast cereal started out as a digestive aid. It had a strange short-lived religious connection, but we'll get to that in a second. In modern times, cereal often switches between being a healthy food and a lazy meal. Jerry Seinfeld wasn't the only one replacing proper dinners with bowls of Cheerios. The first, rather rough cereal came about in 1863, created by a religious vegetarian named James Jackson. Jackson used graham, a whole wheat flour dough, dried and broken into shapes so hard, they had to be soaked in milk overnight. He called his mushy stuff, granular. John Kellogg, a surgeon who ran a health spa in Michigan, later revised Jackson's recipe. Thankfully the new mix would include grapes and nuts. Kellogg altered the name to granola, tagging it a healthful food, thoroughly cooked and partially digested. Yucky. By 1905, John and his younger brother Will had figured out a way to make a flaked cereal using wheat, which would stay crisp in the pantry for weeks. A year on, young Will started up the long-windedly named Battle Creek Toasted Corn Flake Company and eventually switched the wheat in his flakes to corn. You can guess what came next. Kellogg's Corn Flakes were first sold in the US in 1906, making their way across the world, reaching Australia by the early 1920s. Being a strict Seventh-day Adventist, John Kellogg initially marketed the cereal as a healthy, ready-to-eat, anti-masturbatory meal. Yep, you heard right. In a freakish episode of history, Kellogg wrote that masturbation led to poor digestion. He claimed it also led to memory loss, impaired vision, heart disease, epilepsy, and insanity. To break young boys of the habit, he suggested procedures that ranged from the ridiculous to the barbaric. This included tying up their hands. He'd otherwise bandage the offending organ, or would put a cage over it. Young girls had it worse, with pure carbolic acid applied to the clitoris, or, in more extreme cases, surgical removal. When those tactics didn't work, or were realized as inhumane, he recommended they just ate a good bowl of corn flakes, of course. Over the decades, the representation and promotion of cereals became somewhat friendlier. Before the first official mascot appeared, cartoon characters, such as Mickey Mouse, were used to promote certain cereals. The first official cereal mascot had been around since 1882, simply known as the Quaker Oats Man. Oats Man soon faded into the background as more colorful characters started to appear on the market. Today there are hundreds of different cereals. And almost as many mascots. Not just from the US but around the world. And if we're lucky, the next generation of kids will have just as many great icons to push us to eat that most important meal of the day. Breakfast.